Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 11:30 on the dot, and we are going to get started with our Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation webinar. My name is Kara Garrett, and if you have seen this webinar before, you will know that I am the moderator of this webinar series. And this webinar will last about 30 minutes, and it will also be recorded. Please type any questions into the Q&A portion of your screen, and we will answer them as quickly as possible. After our featured speaker has completed their presentations, we will be holding a question and answer session. If you have any questions after the webinar has concluded, we will be providing contact information for the program to allow you to reach out directly. All webinar documentation, including the PDF of the PowerPoint, recording of the webinar, and all other related documentation discussed during this presentation will be available at our website, which is listed in the chat. We will also post that on our PDF. Should you encounter any issues, as I mentioned before, please give me a call at 916-201-5539 or at my email listed in the chat. So to get things started, today's webinar will focus on Zone 0 and burn permit applications. And we do have Acting State Fire Marshal and Deputy Director of our Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Program, Daniel Berlant, and here to say a few words. So take it away, Chief.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to hear the latest on really some evolving science and changes in best practices when it comes to preparing communities. An important part of our overall strategy in addressing California's wildfire problem is to ensure that we are building our homes smarter and that we're ensuring that we're taking steps in removing any type of hazardous or flammable items around the home. And so that has really led to a lot of research that I know our team will talk about today that is leading to some changes here in California. But right now, best practices in how we ensure that we have that ember resistant zone around our home. And then secondly, the topic obviously about burn permits. Many people don't realize that there are options that allow people in some areas to burn landscape debris while especially creating their defensible space, but it is a leading cause of our wildfires. Are people trying to do the right thing, but doing it the wrong way? And so our new permitting process is really meant to not only streamline the process, but also to ensure people are taking the proper steps to prevent sparking a wildfire while doing their defensible space work. So I'm going to turn it back over to our team, but really excited that you're able to join us this morning and looking forward to some great questions and dialogue.
Thank you so much, Chief. So now let's get started with our first presenter, and I will turn it over to her, Assistant Chief Heather McCauley, and she will introduce herself and share information about the Defensible Space, or about the Defensible Space program in Zone 0. So go ahead, Chief.
All right. Thank you, Chief Berlant, for opening that up for us. And thank you, Kara. My name is, again, Heather McCauley. I'm the Assistant Chief for the Defensible Space Program. And today I'm going to be talking about what our Defensible Space Program does and the new Zone 0 that we are introducing and hoping it goes into effect soon. People often ask, what does a Defensible Space Program do? Well, it guides, trains, reports, and instructs the defensible space and coordinators and inspectors within the CAL FIRE 24 units and the 6 contract counties statewide. We also maintain the applications and dashboards that support the inspection process. The rest of the Office of State Fire Marshal programs in our CWPM use the information we collect from multiple other programs, and we set a baseline for how well defensible space is working in areas that experience wildfire destruction. Why is this work important? Well, defensible space coupled with home hardening is essential to improve your home's chance of surviving a wildfire. Defensible space is the buffer you create between a building on your property and the grass, trees, shrubs, or any wildland area that surround it. This space is needed to slow or stop the spread of wildfire, and it helps protect your home from catching fire, either from embers, direct flame contact, or radiant heat. Proper defensible space also provides firefighters a safe area to work in and defend your home. Zone 0, ember resistant zone. What is Zone 0? Well, defensible space right now has 2 zones. Zone 1 is 5 feet to 30 feet away from a structure on your property. That includes your dwelling as well as any outbuildings. And Zone 2 is 30 feet to 100 feet from your structure. Zone 0 is new legislation from Assembly Bill 3074 that will enforce the 0 to 5 feet from your structure, also known as the ember resistant zone. This zone will be added to the current Public Resource Code 4291 and the California Code of Regulations 1299. CAL FIRE has teamed with IBHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and other entities to determine what other factors wildfire influences affect structures. It was determined that not only the areas surrounding the structure on personal property, but vegetation, decorations, and additional flammable material attached to the house is contributing to structure ignition. The less flammable material that can be up against the home, better the outcome the structure has to oncoming fire. Where can I find updates to legislation? The Board of Forestry has a website that has great information on all of our defensible space and all the great work they're doing, as well as the website for the state legislative information page.
All right, thank you, Chief. So now we will head on to our next section, which is information about burn permits. So I will turn it now to Deputy Chief Morgan. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm glad you all showed up here. I have quite a list of attendees here. Thanks for those who are chiming in or logging in from outside of CAL FIRE. That's excellent to see. We're starting to get out there and reaching more individuals. So recently, on January 3rd, CAL FIRE introduced and launched a new burn permit application. We had been issuing some online burn permits for a couple of years, but only for the residential hazard reduction burning. And what we've added is a revamped version of the residential permit application, along with the addition of your agency ag and broadcast burn permits, so an LE5 and an LE7. So these are for those projects that are much larger than residential scale projects. These would include things like large pile burning, larger than 4x4 piles, perhaps broadcast burning of an acre or 5,000 acres of grass and down and dead vegetation. Items on the agricultural side where you may need to convert a feed species, or eradicate invasive species of plants and that type of thing. So that's the real big addition here. And what we've been able to do is move away from the old school paper applications and put our applications in the hands of the user at their very, at the tips of their fingers. Any smart device, a phone or a tablet, a laptop or a desktop computer, you can access our burnpermit.fire.ca.gov website. And from there, you move through the entire process. So applicants can do this from anywhere they have internet service. We also are testing some kiosk sites. We have one test site right now that's going through the jumping through the hoops, so to speak, to make sure it's what we need to put out there for the public, but those would be located at like CAL FIRE headquarters stations throughout the state, and potentially other locations if it's deemed necessary and secure, which is a whole nother aspect. Going through this, Kara, I'm curious, can you click on that burn permit? Thank you. Yep. So going through this, we're actually going to jump into the actual website. You'll notice under plan, Kara, we're only going to, you go right ahead. We're going to click on these links and just show you there's some some really good information found within this burn permit website. Good stuff for really learning about how to safely conduct a burn, how to find your location and whether or not CAL FIRE would be the correct entity to issue that permit. That's the determining whether you're in the state responsibility area or SRA. And then, of course, the requirements. What types of rules do I have to follow? So that's all here, and other links you'll be able to see as well. Go ahead. And then the verify. This is just simply a list of counties throughout the state and whether they allow burning in general or not. Certain counties have different rules, so they are listed here as you go down through the counties, and you'll kind of see certain counties have links that go to different websites to really dive into their specific requirements. And we can go back, Kara. And then the all-important apply here button. So when we go in there, you'll have an option to choose the type of permit. Well, the first three things you see, those bullet points above the icons, are kind of the definition of what each one does. So we talked about residential burning, and then we have broadcast burning. And then those agency ag burn types of permits. Kara, let's just go right into the residential burn permit. And if you'll scroll all the way to the bottom and start that video, we'll get that going. I'm not sure if it's going to, if we're going to, there you go. That's perfect. So then we'll scroll back up to the top and start again. The reason I do that, because it does require you to watch that video, but basically it goes through everything we're going to go through here as well. I like to get that started early. So on a residential burn permit, it talks about what can be burned. It does also have links to other websites like One Less Spark to really talk about and reiterate that safety component to hazard reduction burning, especially at the residential level. Because we don't necessarily go out and check every site for residential burning. So we really want to drive that point home for that hazard reduction safety items. And as we scroll down, it talks about what can be burned and also gives you a link to the Air Resources Board website to really give the user an opportunity to learn not just about CAL FIRE and our requirements, but also how does burning really impact our air quality and what types of permits would be required for or from the Air Resources Board. That's a quick way of saying many different things. Could be an air quality management district, could be air pollution control district, and so on. But most of those resources are all found through the Air Resources Board website. And then the all-important rules. And just to start out with, hey, folks, there are violations that could be, an issue for you. So we list that out a little bit, and we do always reiterate that the individual needs to really be careful in this. Go ahead, Karen. We start to get into some of those residential burning sort of outline of what this looks like, and a little better definition than the one-liner on the previous page. So you're really looking at those 4x4 piles. We talk about clearance and some of the tools that you need to have around, and also really, we just want to make sure that folks understand that weather conditions, burning conditions, that all plays into whether or not someone should ever light that match. So we start to get into that, and we can go on down to the bottom, Kara. We're going to pretend you heard all of that through the video. It takes about 1 minute and 58 seconds. and then say, yep, we certify we watched it. And then it's a simple process. We can just any name, Joe Test. And for this one, I don't think it'll take all 9s, but we could see, there you go, that's a valid one. And you can throw my email address in here, Kara, if you don't mind. So some really simple information needed there. And then the next thing is just where in the world is this going to occur? So you can enter your address, and the 215 is fine for the headquarters location. Oh, 715, thanks. Now you'll notice as you start to type, it fills in the address for you. So you'll have that option. This big orange banner, I always click it off. It's just saying that your computer's not sharing its location. As you scroll down, Kara, you're going to see that that this point, see this big pink banner at the bottom, I'm going to ask you, hey, is this where it's going to take place? But underneath that, there's a warning that says, hey, this burn location is not within CAL FIRE's responsibility area. So that's really important for folks to understand and know that we're not going to issue you a permit for this area, and the system knows whether or not it's in or out of our jurisdiction. If you don't mind, Kara, scroll back up to the map and hit Control while you scroll out with your cursor there. As we scroll way out, we're going to start to see colors appear on the map, and that's what this yellow and sort of teal green color represent. Yellow is state responsibility area where we would issue any of the 3 types of permits that we've been talking about. In the teal or greenish color, that's an area that has separate DPA, so there may be another entity involved. So we don't want to just administratively issue a permit in that area without first communicating with that other jurisdiction and making sure we're all on the same page for that. Kara, if you could type in a new address, you can X that out, and then it'll be 5366. I always get this one wrong. And then put CA 49. And that Mariposa one there at the bottom, that's the one. So this is one of our CAL FIRE headquarters, and you can see the map is yellow. This is state responsibility area, but maybe I don't necessarily want to have my pile right there on the edge of the highway. Kara, if you could find an open place on the map and just put your cursor on the open place and click one time. That moves the placement of the flag. We'll scroll down. You can place that anywhere. And it's going to say, is this now the point on the map down there in the pink, where this burn would take place? We'll click yes. And then through this, it's just going to ask you about the address, and we can just click, click, click yes through all these questions, Kara, until we get to the very bottom. And then, so right here, I do want to point out that we give the user an option to go straight to our help desk here. If they're having a problem up to this point, they can ask their questions or make their comments right from this page and let us know. And we get that. There's about 10 of us on the help desk group who get those emails, and we can respond and help the public in a quick, effective manner. Go ahead and hit next. Then it's just a review of the address information and that type of thing. Next. And then it's the final page. Some more rules and regulations, that type of stuff, really reiterating what we've already talked about. You see there is a unique ID to this particular request. And then we give the individual an option for saying whether or not this is a culturally related burn, which is application of fire to land by Native American tribes, tribal organizations, or cultural fire practitioners to achieve cultural goals or objectives. In this case, we are not conducting a cultural burn. You can just throw an X on that signature box there, and then scroll to the bottom. It does ask if you are signing this on behalf of a landowner, and sometimes people ask us, why do we give that option? And it's because landowners don't always conduct this work themselves. They may seek the help of a contractor, of a resource conservation district, so on and so forth, where they have legal right to conduct work on the owner's property. Then the final paragraph there, and we're not going to hit submit on this, Kara, just so you know. That final paragraph just tells the individual what's going to happen next, and it's really important to know an email notification regarding this application will be sent to the email address that was supplied on the application. All right, that's kind of the burn permit process in a nutshell. Of course, if we were to look at or dive into some of the other applications like the broadcast burning, those ones are a little bit more in depth. They talk about a burn plan, contingency plans, things of that nature. I mentioned earlier, we don't go out and inspect the site for every residential burn permit, but we do go potentially out to all of those broadcast burns and those agency ag burns, depending on the scope of the project. And we actually do a site visit before the application is approved. All right, with that, thanks, Kara. I think the next slide is just the question and answer slide, and that puts us at a pretty good point. We have about 9 minutes left for questions and answers.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. And we do have 2 open questions in the Q&A box, and I will go with Michael's first. So his question is, I have property. Let me actually have Michael ask this himself. So Michael, I'm going to allow you to speak. If you could unmute yourself and you could go ahead and ask your question.
Absolutely. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. I have property that abuts right up to Bureau of Reclamation land. And my question was, as a matter of fact, the boundary is within the 35 feet of my house. I was able to get a permit to clean on the other side of that because I didn't want to just go over there and, cut down things. But I struggled with dealing with a state agency. It was like pulling teeth. And I wanted to see what can CDF do to kind of smooth out that interaction and make it easier to get permits to do this, because I will have to renew it eventually. But in order to stay in compliance with PRCD 4291, I had to go through this process with the Bureau of Reclamation to essentially cut grass and trim ladder fuels. Is there any advice or any suggestions that you guys can provide?
Right, that is it's a really great question, and you're definitely not the only one who struggles with this. As you can imagine, all of the different entities who own land, especially on the federal side, we have a lot of boundary areas. So this process is designed to help facilitate exactly what you're talking about, which is that when if we're looking to obtain a permit on land that's, maybe it's not 100 feet away, but it's, it's something closer like yours. It's 35, 40 feet away from the house, and it's already some other entity's land, but you'd like to get your full 100-foot buffer in there. This process would trigger a response from that local CAL FIRE unit, because when you request an inspection that's in someone else's jurisdiction, our system sends that that application through a review process, even if it's a residential hazard reduction permit that you're asking for. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that we don't necessarily do an inspection on those residential ones, but for those certain types, like what you're talking about, where it's in someone else's jurisdiction, we do flag those ones, and it goes through that review process. What happens at the CAL FIRE unit level is they make that phone call and they start that conversation, not only just with you, but also with that other entity, to kind of help you navigate through that local condition. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. That would be
And
very
Larry.
helpful. I appreciate it.
Okay, perfect.
So,
So,
will the burn permit app not allow a permit within a contract county? This is true. We have excluded the contract counties from this particular burn permit application.
okay, perfect. We have about 4 more minutes left, so just enough time for one more question. If anyone would like to raise your hand, I can go ahead and unmute you, and you can ask your question. And if you would like to send us an email after this presentation has concluded, the contact information for both chiefs are listed right here. And also we have both websites listed for resources and where they can be found. So not seeing any additional questions, we will go ahead and move on to speaking about our next upcoming webinars, which is going to be on February 27th is the next one, and that will be focused on combining both defensible space and home hardening. So how they both work together, bringing what we spoke about a couple weeks ago with home hardening and bringing in defensible space topics as well, and how they just combine. So our speakers that are on today will be speaking again, as well as Chief O'Neill, who spoke last week. And then you can see the other 3 upcoming webinars. But please follow us on social media. That is where we will have all of the flyers for the upcoming webinars and more information. But at this time, I will conclude this webinar series for today. And yeah, go ahead and send us an email or reach out on our websites. Thank you so much, everyone.